Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, a show that will help you transform your marketing from mere messaging to programs that break the rules and make a difference. Join the movement today and learn non-traditional techniques that give you an edge. Now, here's your Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
To change or not to change, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the CMO mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outraged designers or to rebrand against a sea of competitors and by marketing end them. Okay, with apologies to old Willie Shakespeare, in today's episode, we ask the question, if it ain't broke, should you break it anyway? And if so, by how much? Do you take a sledgehammer and start from scratch? How far do you have to go to get a marketplace to reconsider your brand, to look at your business with fresh eyes? And how do you make sure your rebranding efforts are not just a new coat of paint on an old barn? To answer these questions and more, I'm really excited to chat with my guest today, Carolyn Feinstein. Carolyn is the CMO at Dropbox, the cloud storage company with over 500 million users, including yours truly, and I'm sure most of the listeners. Carolyn joined Dropbox in 2016 after 19 years at Electronic Arts, which we'll talk about a bit. About 8 months after arriving at Dropbox, she and her associates rebranded in a rather dramatic way, one that we'll no doubt talk about in great length. So, Caroline, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you on a number of levels, but I couldn't help but notice in your bio it said that you are a storyteller. So let's just get into that. Do you have a story, a go-to story that you like to share with fellow marketers?
A go-to story. Wow. I mean, I think I guess my go-to story on that topic is that how deeply I believe that our job as marketers is story. At the end of the day, our role is to understand the people that we're trying to reach deeply, understand where our areas of shared passion are, and to know the kind of stories that will resonate most deeply, and then to try to tell them in as bold and as brave a way as we possibly can.
So we've been talking a lot about story, both on the show and among my associates. And it's funny, it's actually difficult to decide what a story is and what isn't a story. Have you addressed that challenge? I mean, what's a story to you?
I think a story to me is an articulation of who your company, who your brand, or who your products intend to be in the world, the role that you want to play, and the impact that you hope to have. And then to tell a story about that is one that really connects. I think sometimes I think we believe that storytelling is just for consumers. And in truth, no matter who we're selling to, whether we're selling to people in a consumer environment, in a business environment, we're all people and we all connect and receive information through story at our core. So, regardless of the setting, I think it all kind of distills down to the power of story.
Okay, as a means of emotionally connecting with the target and resonating versus, say, rational facts. Okay, so speaking of stories and irrational choices, I understand you were at UNC for business school?
Yes, and that was a very rational choice for me.
And why?
I went to business school at Carolina. I had grown up in the Northeast, and I had spent my undergraduate time there and my whole life there. And I thought, if I'm going to take this kind of 2-year opportunity to invest in myself and my education, I wanted to do it in a part of the world that I'd never experienced before. So I decided to go south. And, went to the obvious choice in the Triangle area, which was Carolyn.
Yes. Well, well, a lot of the Dukies know that, a lot of the listeners know that I'm a Dukie. I even had, Professor Moorman from the Fuqua School of Business on the show. So we'll just let that slide for the moment. And I'm going to emphasize this fact, and I love it because I do have some listeners that are college students, and it's such an opportunity to expand your horizons and going to a new region in the country. That's exactly the same reason why I went to Duke, is just to get out of what happened to be my hometown, which is Newport Beach, California. Okay. So while we're talking personal things, I couldn't help but read a story on you that talked about your daily routine, and your kids and so forth. But your dog Steeler came up as probably the single distinguishing factor in terms of whether you make it to work on time. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, I am in love with my yellow lab, Steeler, who's 5 years old, and who is a big part of my morning routine. He's sort of my morning meditation, which is taking him for a walk in the Presidio National Park, which is, I'm lucky to have that right across the street from my house. But my dog is a cuddler, so what I always find is if he's in a particularly cuddly mood in the morning, then I am late for work because I can't resist him.
I'm afraid that is going to be the highlight of the episode in this sense. People are only going to remember Steeler and cuddling. But we're going to try to get this back to some of the business of the shows. You were at EA a long time. If you look back at those 19 years there, what was maybe one courageous moment or that where you felt, boy, that was a bold move and it really paid off?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I was at EA for almost 16 years. Not 19.
Thank you for that.
But it was, in fact, a really long career there. And I'm often asked, why on earth were you at EA for 16 years? And I think it was sort of, I never intended to be, but the video game industry is really interesting in that it essentially reinvents itself in these kind of 4 to 6 year cycles where the technology and the hardware completely becomes something new. And as that happens, so does the business challenge, so does the consumer. So, in my tenure there, the people playing games and the industry itself just exploded. And every time I would get itchy and think about leaving, the business opportunity for me and the learning kind of became such that I decided to stay. I think one of the biggest kind of learnings or bold moments for me there was the recognition of the incredible power of the voice of our consumers and the people who played our games, and the recognition that there was nothing that we would be able to say about a brand like EA Sports or even a beloved game like Madden or FIFA that would ever be as powerful to another gamer as what somebody as a gamer said about it themselves. So I think that recognition really allowed us to shift our perspective on the way we told stories, the way we invested in the voices of players and kind of elevated and evangelized the experiences that they were having. And in doing so, had a much more kind of genuine and authentic conversation within the cultures that we shared. So, whether we were all people who were incredibly passionate about international soccer or people who loved American football, we were in a dialogue together and our players' voices were more important than our own.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I actually, we were in the game development business early on at Renegade when Trip Hawkins did 3DO platform and partnered with Panasonic. So we developed 2 games, and I was literally at the first E3, and it was quite a wild experience. Of course, they made a bad bet. Starting a new platform is hard work. Really, and the money is clearly in the software. So anyway, that was an interesting experience. I love being in it, and you're right. I could see how that would be exciting because it's so new. Every 2-3 years, a new platform, a new experience, a new opportunity, and recognizing that in a passionate community. And I think this is a lesson for lots of brands. If you're lucky enough to be in a category where your users are so passionate and so vocal about their experience, letting them do the talking, and of course listening and responding is key. So I think that's a perfect place to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into the rebranding, which is I think really an amazing story to share. So stay with us. Hey, it's Drew. I wanted to use this break to ask you a single question. Are you a courageous marketer? Do you have the courage to go to your board of directors and say, marketing could drive the growth of this company? We just need 3 times the budget. Do you have the courage to take the big idea that you already have and extend it internally and externally through influencers, through the media, through all of your content? If you're a courageous marketer but aren't sure how to roadmap all of this, I have a big idea for you. It's called Renegade Thinking. It's a program that we've developed and work with exclusively for B2B marketers, generally at large companies. And I want to give you my cell phone, 917-679-8852. Just text Renegade Thinking to 917-679-8852, and we can talk about how you can cut through. Okay, we're back, and my guest is Carolyn Feinstein, who is the CMO at Dropbox. And I know that most of you are familiar with Dropbox, and when you think about the experience of it, there's the sort of it's white and there's the blue box. But last year, they relaunched. They really, literally relaunched the brand. Can you take us back, Carolyn, to when this happened and why you felt it was necessary?
Absolutely. So I would say about 4 or 5 months after I got to Dropbox, we started to have some important conversations about telling the story of the company. I think what we knew was that there was so much that was unique and special about Dropbox. In fact, one of the main reasons I came to the company was the opportunity to further the story of this incredible brand that is beloved by, as you said, 500 million people around the world. So it was an incredible opportunity, and there was a lot of love for the brand already. But the reality was, with so much special things going on inside the company, we had really kept the story of Dropbox very much to ourselves. And we had a real opportunity to tell our story, to be more forward about our point of view on the culture of modern work and our ambition for what we could do to create a more enlightened way for people to work together. And it was really clear that we had an opportunity. We had also, one of the first things I did when I got to Dropbox was dug into a lot of brand tracking studies and tried to get a sense of where Dropbox sat within the competitive landscape. And even though I think internally we perceived ourselves to be very different from the companies we were competing against, in reality, when you looked at those brand tracking studies, there wasn't a tremendous amount of daylight from users between ourselves and our closest competitors, both those that are, were very big and those that were smaller. So that really highlighted from a quantitative standpoint, there was a real reason to differentiate the brand. And then in terms of our ambition and where the company was going, there was a tremendous opportunity to kind of expand people's perceptions of who we are from the file sync and share company that they have known and loved all this time to the reality of the role that we truly play, which is, the reality is 70 to 80% of people who are using Dropbox are using it at work. They're using it to collaborate, and they're using it as the center of their team's creative experience. And we really wanted to make that real.
All right, well, let's break this down. There are a couple of things that you said that I think are important. First, you have a brand tracking study, which really sort of, if you're a CMO and you don't have one, you have to ask the question, why not? And so what's interesting to me is, so basically, what I heard was were focused on the utility, and they saw the utility as essentially the same, that there wasn't a massive distinction between the brands. And I suspect that if you looked at it from a design standpoint, it was probably true too. Everybody was sort of blue and white, right? I mean, it was sort of, there's this sort of safe, trust, reliable, sort of behind the scenes sort of notion of these brands, which is kind of the role that they play. I mean, honestly, I don't think about Dropbox every day, even though I go to it every day. It's there. And so it felt like you're trying to get me to think about my relationship with the brand a little bit different.
Yeah, I think that's really perceptive. And I think there were really two prongs to our desire to reimagine kind of the story of Dropbox. One, from kind of a broad storytelling, like what is the stake that we wanted to put in the ground in terms of the role that Dropbox will play. And then to your point, the second was a design sensibility, right? What do we look like out in the world? And it was really interesting if you think about Dropbox's kind of brand and design sensibility. For a long time, it had been characterized by these sort of friendly, kind of innocuous, hand-drawn people. At the time when that was created, it was groundbreaking in tech. Nobody was using sort of hand-drawn characters, and it brought a real sense of humanity to the brand at a time when that didn't really exist across tech. In the intervening period, that kind of became the design language of technology. So everybody sort of I won't say copy, but kind of chose to come along on that kind of humanization design style. And as a result, what we were doing was no longer differentiated. And in fact, the way we were presenting ourselves had become more safe as the whole category had kind of come to this same place. So it was really important that we did what we had done the first time, which was to then take it to a completely different place and try to lead the conversation again.
And was there any concern at well, gosh, everybody knows us as this look, we have this thing. Is there with that this, because a lot of times with brand change, there are people who say, I hate the new logo, I love the old logo, and, because there's such familiarity, there's this disruption, right? And it was there some moments of fear and risk? Oh my God, we're changing stuff that people really like?
There was a lot of that, I would say. There was a lot of that. And I think, personally for me, I was new enough at Dropbox that there was a lot of risk involved in kind of aggressively looking to lead and advocate for change of this magnitude. But what I would say is that somebody asked me recently what I was most proud of as it relates to this new brand style and story. And I think what I'm most proud of is that as a company and as a group of people, from those of us in marketing to our founders, Drew and Arash, there were a number of inflection points in the development of this campaign and these ideas where we had options, right, that ranged from the safest, most incremental option all the way to the one that was most bold and most courageous. And at every inflection point, we chose the boldest and most courageous option as a group. And we really held hands in those moments and decided that we were good there and that we knew that change was hard. It was going to be hard internally. It was going to cause reactions externally. But we decided that we were great with that because we wanted to snap people's attention to this new reality of who we are. And incrementalism wasn't going to get us there.
There's so many things in there that I want to break down but what gave you the courage? I mean, it sounds like one of the things that gave you the courage is that you have a track record. The company had a track record of bold moves. But what personally gave you the courage and the confidence that the choice that you were making, this new thing, was the right thing for this rebrand? I
think that courage probably came from experience and understanding that, I've had a deep-seated belief for a long time that the difference between great brands and good brands are that they have a point of view on the world. They have a personality that you can understand. And you can feel who they are through the stories that they tell and the design sensibility that they put forward. And that bland and safe has never worked in my career. And for me, being in a tech company like this one, frankly, for the first time, what felt really important to me was to buck the convention that exists, which is if I'm turning myself toward, quote, business, then I need to sterilize my communication style and I need to communicate in a way that is sort of devoid of personality. And I thought we had a huge opportunity to zag away from that and to differentiate ourselves by speaking in a very human way that that was reflective of the way people really use the product and spoke to kind of the center of our target.
Wow. Okay. I think that's a lot of good stuff. And I want to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about several other things that have occurred to me during that. Really, it is absolutely an expression of why you need to have courage as a CMO, because just safe and bland never gets it done. So we'll be right back.
You've been listening to another great interview on Renegade Thinkers Unite with Drew Neiser. But the value doesn't end there. As a listener, you can download a free ebook from Drew, Renegade Thinkers, interviews with 11 trailblazing CMOs any business can learn from. Top marketing thought leaders and proven executives from Time Warner, American Express, and Chico's, and others. Get your free copy at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook. For listeners only at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook.
We're back, and my guest is Carolyn Feinstein, the CMO of Dropbox, and we've been talking about the need to have courage and why good doesn't get you there, and you so many interesting things that you said I want to go back to, but one of them was you were new to the company, so in some ways you weren't as attached to the brand, but your employees, I bet a lot of them had been there a long time and loved the brand as it was. How did you roll this out internally and make sure that the internal audience got excited about the new brand?
It's a great question, and it was definitely something that we spent a lot of time thinking about, and it wasn't easy. So I think the good news was that we were pursuing storytelling and a design style that we felt like was inspiring, but it was definitely a departure. So we knew that there would be strong internal reactions. So we spent an enormous amount of time on the rollout. We held all hands meetings for our entire company as we rolled this out. We created artwork that hung on the walls of our offices all around the world. We did sort of an evangelism tour and met with teams across the company in order to explain the why behind the story and the why behind this design style. And we're still in that process. I think we spent a lot of time talking about the fact that great brands are really built from the inside out, and we have to believe in this brand. We have to love it and own it internally before it can ever truly resonate externally. So the internal rollout was really, really important. But as we talk about all the time here, we're on a journey. And so, bringing our internal Dropboxers along is going to take a long time, just as it is, to drive all the adoption that we want externally.
As you said, Dropboxers, which I love, it occurred to me as I recently did, or actually now a month or so ago, an interview with the CMO of Xerox. And of course, that's when you learn the word eponym, which is when your brand becomes a verb and a noun or an adjective. And it feels to me like Dropbox is very close, if not already, at the point where people say Dropbox it just the way they do FedEx and Xerox it. Is that sort of, is that a reality? And did your tracking sort of show that people sort of equate you in and the category?
It's a great question. I mean, I haven't seen that in any of the studies that I've looked at, but I think we are really proud of the fact that we know that we have pioneered and defined a category. So it wouldn't surprise me that that's the case and that that's the way people think about us. And I think our really big opportunity is to do that again, right? As we grow into being this global collaboration platform that really kind of lives at the center of teams' creative experience, we have the opportunity to do that again, which we're really excited about.
You know, the global collaboration idea really resonated with me, and it's funny because for this podcast, there are a number of people involved in it. You wouldn't believe it, but there are I have a producer who will take this recording and then edit it and make it sound great. And so the file will go up onto Dropbox. I have a writer who will help transcribe it and then will turn it into show notes, and then I write my articles from it. And then there are other people who will go back and create a minor video. And Dropbox is sort of at the center of this. But in a very, I'm going to say, passive way. And I feel like part of this relaunch for you is not just the passiveness of, hey, we're a storage place, but, this collaboration notion. Part of the rebrand, I feel like, also came to life because you have some new products to go with it. Is that a fair statement?
It absolutely is. I mean, if you think about Dropbox's history, we have been this sort of beautiful, simple, elegant solution that has sat quietly in the background of your life, and people love it because it just works every time and it makes life easier. As we move forward and the role that we play in people's lives change, that was really an impetus for the rebrand. And you're right. I mean, products like Paper, Dropbox Paper is a perfect example, right? Dropbox Paper is this living workspace where people and ideas can come together. And it's an opportunity to share everything from sound files to video to text and to project manage something exactly like this show, kind of in real time in a very alive and dynamic way. Paper has completely transformed, I'll tell you, it's completely transformed my work experience, and it's how we run our entire company. So for me, arriving at Dropbox and getting indoctrinated into Paper life really changed work for me day in, day out. So I'm super passionate about it and really excited about what it means, not only for the future of Dropbox, but really for the future of work.
And that's really an interesting thing. And I want to emphasize that. And before I even get to my summary, when you do a rebrand and you think about a rebrand, if it is just sort of a new logo and a new look and feel, it will fall flat 99% of the time because it's just paint. What's interesting to me is that this rebrand called attention to new products that you may have already had that people weren't aware of. And I think some new products that are also in development. And so it becomes real, right? You had to do something. It was more than just doing an ad and a redesign and adding a bunch of colors to the website. So yay for that. Let's go deeper a little bit into the process of how you got to this strategy for your new campaign.
Sure. I mean, I think, as you know, I mean, any great brand story is really rooted in kind of a universal truth or a fundamental problem that needs solving. And we did a tremendous amount of upfront strategy work to get to this campaign idea. I mean, many months more, frankly, than I had ever done before. And the root of the problem that we really hooked onto is the crisis of modern work. I think for many of us, modern work has become a grind, and we are distracting ourselves to death with the constant, pinging and messaging, and the realization that for us to get to the kind of creative outcomes or to solve some of the most meaty challenges that we face as a society, we need the time to focus as creative groups of people to kind of to solve those problems. And that time and that focus is increasingly hard to come by. And so that was the universal truth that we really wanted to go after. And that's what got us to this idea of the world needs your creative energy. And this fact that we fundamentally believe as Dropbox that every single one of us wakes up in the morning with this tremendous reservoir of creative energy inside us. And that creative energy is either multiplied and enhanced by the power of a great team like the one working on your show and great tools that enable you to do extraordinary things, or it's dissipated like so many other precious resources. And we really want Dropbox and products, to your point, like Dropbox Paper and Dropbox Showcase, to solve for some of these problems and to allow us to do what human beings do best, which is come up with creative solutions that drive businesses or creative outcomes or societal challenges forward. So I think to your point, this was very much about telling a high-level story about unleashing the world's creative energy, which is the role that we want to play, and then making it clear that Dropbox is uniquely in position to accomplish that because of the products that we have recently launched.
That's really interesting. And it sounds like you check so many of the boxes that I'm going to summarize. I just love that. And what do you think was this sort of, as you look back at this campaign and its evolution, the biggest lessons that you've learned?
Great question. I mean, we're still very early in our understanding of the effectiveness of this campaign. And as you know, when you are trying to shift perception of a beloved brand as we are, it's a long-term effort and something that, we plan to be doing over a period of several years. But I think the ways that we are looking at our success to date are people engaging with the content, right? So we have hundreds of millions of views of some of the video assets that we've created. So what we're learning is that this story around creative energy and the power of telling that story through creators that people respect and admire is connecting, right? So that's a really important view for us. We had really aggressive impression goals for this campaign globally in the billions, and we're well on track to exceed those numbers. And I think we're seeing really strong traffic to Dropbox. And a lot of that traffic is new to us. So that's another way that we're able to say, not only are we kind of validating the brand love of people who are already inside of our community, but we're causing people to think about Dropbox in a different way and to come to us to learn more. So, obviously every week we are kind of looking at data from the prior week of the campaign and optimizing for the week coming up in terms of our media footprint. But at a high level, those are our key learnings to date.
And you know what? Those are great. And I'm going to repeat those for, in my book, I had Antonio Lucio, who at the time was the CMO of Visa, who's now the CMO at HP. And he talked about 3 measures, and you just nailed them. And one measure is reach and the impressions that you get, how many people actually see the message. Because you are a mass brand in many ways. And so reach matters. Number 2 was he called it product lift and usage, right? So in your case is what kind of traffic are you getting, and new traffic, net new traffic to Dropbox.com. And then finally there's sort of the brand perception and, the tracking changes that are taking place. It's interesting to me, I think the choice of, going after this idea of creative energy appeals to people like me and others in an industry where we're more likely to talk about a campaign like this because we believe we're creative people and creativity matters. And in a world where it's all about machines and bots and AI and everything, there's something wonderful about saying, hey, your creativity matters.
Agreed. And I think, one of the things that is really important to us is this idea that we definitely do not believe that creative energy is limited to those people who have like a capital C creative in their title. There is no doubt that, when we built the campaign, the center of our target were marketers and designers and salespeople and those who create the greatest amount of content in organizations and tend to drive a lot of viral adoption of products like Dropbox. But our belief is that all of us need to apply creative energy to do our best work, whether you are figuring out a new financial model or you're a person, making a film at Sundance. You have a similar need to bring your creative energy to the task in order to do your best work.
So I'm going to attempt to wrap up the show and some of the things that this reinforced and that I learned. One, I talk about this a lot. You spent a fair amount of time, months and months, on developing a strong strategy. And I've talked to CMOs who rush to judgment, and it's almost always a mistake. A brand it may not be an aircraft carrier, but if it's in the possession of a lot of people, you have to be really careful and build your rebrand on a really strong strategy. And in the process, what was interesting to me is the strategic foundation was kind of naming a problem and recognizing this problem so you could rally then the positioning around a problem. And this is sort of work as hard and work as a grind, and creativity as this release to it. So you created the problem that you solved. You talked a lot about sort of going big or going home, and that this is an organization that has done this. But I think when it comes to rebranding, incremental won't get the job done. You really made a dramatic shift, and I will link to the Dropbox pre-post. There's some wonderful reviews of the design changes that really show you what happened before and afterwards, and folks that are curious as what this was about can see it. Importantly, internal audience was critical here. They need to buy in, because if they don't, it will fail. And so that was part of it. And what I think is interesting is you kind of reimagined what your product was, and then you helped people reimagine it sort of for them. Because again, I sort of honestly think of Dropbox as kind of dumb in that I just put stuff in it, right? And what you're really saying is, no, it's smart. It's almost like it moved from this sort of product where I park stuff to a service that helps me be more creative. That's a much more inspiring position to be in. I want to work for that company, not the sort of the one that just, I park stuff in. So, anyway, I'm impressed, and I think hopefully the listeners learn quite a bit. I really appreciate you spending time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. So
for the listeners, again, go to the show notes page, because we'll have lots of links. We didn't really talk about a goodwill effort that Dropbox is doing. I think it's pretty cool. I'll link to that and link to, again, some of the things that, and there's a blog post that Carolyn wrote on the rebranding and what that meant to the organization. So as always, thank you for listening. Don't forget to share this with your friends. Write a review on iTunes. Always appreciate that. And until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.